And good evening. Welcome to the Southern Fried MAGA Report. Appreciate those of you who are stopping by. I know it's awful late, but we try to get back on schedule with our MAGA Report each night through the week. Tonight's topic is the Russia-Ukraine war. Things are entering the danger zone. I put that into the title for the show. This has took a serious turn. It's been escalating some over the last 3 weeks or so, or maybe a little more than that, especially over the last 2 weeks. A real escalation, and tonight there is news it's going to escalate even more. Already there has been negotiations, prisoner swaps, up to 1,000 soldiers each side, prisoners of war, some of them looking very frail, glad to be home, a lot of tears. There was hope for some sort of a ceasefire. They were trying to get a 3-day ceasefire so they could work on some of the bigger issues of who would move out of where, who would get what. Both sides, seemed agreeable to that. Both sides have at times provoked and escalated themselves. The president spoke of that uh, yesterday and today. On this Memorial Day that we honor in America for all the fallen that goes to our families, it is absolutely sad that this is going on. It has been a bloodbath. It is getting worse. War is never good. We know that. So what has escalated? What has changed? We've seen a massive influx of drones and missiles into the country more than ever before on any one day. So we're seeing an escalation in that of well over nearly 400 by Russia into Ukraine. But it's not even that, which is not good. It's to civilian areas, many cities. So this was already going on. It had escalated a lot. A van was hit in the region near the Russian border where Ukrainians had entered Russia to try to alleviate some of the frontline stuff. It had been successful for a time. Of course, you remember the pipe surprise attack, the flanking move that Russia did a few weeks ago, where they walked for a long way in a pipe and flanked the Ukrainians. It was very bloody. And so there has been this back and forth. There has been, of course, Russia owns the skies, but Ukraine has had drones themselves and been getting intelligence from, Elon Musk's system on and U.S. intelligence on where to fire these missiles at. They've been able to sink a couple of ships, but all that's old news. That's old news. We had hoped, or the world had hoped, I would think they would hope. I know citizens in each country have hoped that this war would come to a close. That has taken a turn. We've entered the danger zone, is what I'm calling it. The danger zone. As of tonight, the limits and restrictions on the range that Ukraine could send weapons or missiles, drones, etc., has been lifted. German Chancellor Merz said there are no longer any range restrictions for weapons that have been delivered to Ukraine. Remember, they've been asking for this. They wanted to hit Moscow. I mean, there was that one attack that did some damage there, might have been some injuries, way back at the beginning of the war, if you remember that. Very little of that. There are some Russian border towns that have been hit, but mostly ships and helicopters being taken down, tanks destroyed. But that was in the field of battle. Very little within Russia proper. Of course, they hit Crimea, which was taken over in 2014. There was that as well. But the range restrictions there, even Joe Biden would not up the range. This has now been removed. And according to the German Chancellor, neither by the British, nor by the French, nor by us, meaning the British, and not by the Americans either, he says that the range restrictions are now lifted. Putin has taken this a step up because he has continued to attack. Now, I don't know what all weapons that has been delivered to Ukraine. There was a time there when that had slowed some. There was artillery shell shortage. There was bullet shortages and things going on. I would doubt very seriously there's too many shortages right now. The world is now taking notice. This thing has now spiraled. Unless something happens quick, this could be a launch point for something very serious. I hope not. But if the range restrictions has been lifted by the parties that are supplying the weapons, Ukraine is definitely going to use that opportunity to strike within the heart of Russia. And where do we go from here? I did hear that. Thank you, Redneck. I love the name Redneck Rammer, by the way, on the Podbean sign. Any thoughts on the reports of Putin's helicopter getting droned? And yes, and thank you for bringing that up. I was so struck by this news that I've heard tonight. The Russians admit this. Now, my gosh, who knows? They could be using it as an excuse. I want to hear a little more about that from the Ukrainian side. But apparently he had went to that Kursk region where the Ukrainians had made an incursion into Russia, and Russia had taken over 3 more villages. They've been trying to push the Ukrainians out. And apparently he wanted a helicopter ride in there to look over things and nearly became a casualty. Now, can you imagine that? So we're seeing an escalation tonight that nobody wants to see. And unfortunately, the president is frustrated. We'll talk about it in just a second. I do want to finish a little bit of this article that's from Newsmax that he says he's the new chancellor. He said that these countries have no longer imposing any range restrictions on weapons supplied to Ukraine as it fights the Russian invasion. Frederick Merz has plunged into diplomatic efforts to try to secure a ceasefire and keep Western support for Ukraine intact since becoming Germany's leader nearly 3 weeks ago. On Monday, he said that there were no longer any range restrictions for weapons that have been delivered to Ukraine, as I mentioned, not by the British, the French, the Germans, or the Americans. This means Ukraine can also defend itself by, for example, attacking military positions in Russia. This is pretty huge. Merz said at a forum organized by WDR Public Television, until a while ago, it couldn't, quote, it can now, end quote. Dangerous words. I'm not saying, I get it, I understand, but that's why I say we've entered the danger zone. He said, quote, we call this long-range fire in jargon. Also supplying Ukraine with weapons that attack military targets in the hinterland, he added. He didn't elaborate, and it wasn't clear whether he was referring to the easing of restrictions on longer-range weapons last year. Commenting on Merz's statements, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the decision to lift range restrictions would be, quote, quite dangerous, end quote, and, quote, run contrary to our efforts to reach a political settlement, end quote. Well, they haven't been trying to reach no political settlement. They've been up in the ante. They've been escalating this war. It is believed, some have said, that Putin now believes he can have total victory in Ukraine. This move, it's not Ukraine is not a NATO nation. Ukraine is not a NATO. They've wanted to be members. Remember, they were trying to fast track them in. I thought it was a mistake. Don't fast track them in. But that's what he was trying to get. There was enough nations that said no, that's not going to happen. There were some that wanted them in. The British have been one of those nations that have been itching for war or something. They continued to push the buttons. I remember they attacked President Trump on his idea of trying to, close this thing down. He was putting pressure on Zelensky. Zelensky finally agreed. He said that he had stopped shipment of weapons at one point. And they basically said, well, the Americans are out. We'll take over now. We'll be the leaders in the world. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's basically what these generals were saying, these defense leaders in these nations. Basically, we will now lead the world. Well, that was kind of a joke anyway. It wasn't going to happen. But could we be sitting on a potential conflict with Russia that extends beyond Ukraine? And there are fears within surrounding NATO nations, Poland, Lithuania, others, that Russia may have their eyes on them. Is Putin went mad? Well, the president spoke on that. We're going to get to that in a minute. Germany has been the second biggest supplier of military aid to Ukraine after the United States. Merz's government has been tight-lipped on whether it will supply Taurus long-range cruise missiles, something his predecessor, Olaf Scholz, refused to do, and Merz advocated for as opposition leader. The government has said it will no longer provide full details of the weapons it will be supplying to Ukraine. Unlike Scholz's administration citing the need for strategic ambiguity, Taurus missiles have a range of up to 310 miles. So this was the lead story tonight. This war is escalating. Another related story to that they have there tonight. Yes, nor should it be from previous agreements. Thank you for liking the show. Appreciate that on the Podbean side and others that are in here tonight. Serious business tonight on Memorial Day. So Robert Wilkie to Newsmax, quote, Putin taking the war to civilians. He has been. He's been hitting all over the countries. At least 30 cities have been targeted. He's the former Secretary of Veteran Affairs who tells Newsmax on Monday that Russian President Vladimir Putin is taking the war in Ukraine to civilians and warned that he cannot be stopped without overwhelming force, quote, end quote. Overwhelming force. President Donald Trump on Sunday issued a social media statement condemning Russian President Vladimir Putin over recent Russian airstrikes against Ukraine that killed at least a dozen people. Later on Sunday, Russia launched the largest assault with drones and missiles against Ukraine since the invasion began, using more than 350 explosive drones and at least 9 cruise missiles in an overnight attack. Wilkie said on Newsmax is Wake Up America that the ongoing attack is following an ancient Russian pattern. Whenever they get involved in conflict, they target civilians. They do this battering ram top of fighting anyway. They just obliterate cities into dust. They take away places for civilians to even live. He says Putin's army is exhausted on the battlefield. He's lost between 200 and 300,000 dead, 900,000 total casualties. So now he's taking the war to civilians. By the way, they were putting the injured back in the line of battle. We covered that a few weeks ago. People on crutches, my God, they were sending them in. Well, they've been making deals with North Korea, and they've been sending thousands of troops, and the North Koreans have been getting lit up, and many of them have died. Remember the stories about fingerprints and faces being burned off, all this crazy stuff? North Korea's had to resupply some of those troops, and we covered the story with the North Korean troops were getting, with this little bit of liberty out in the field of battle, they had become a problem for the Russians. They had been trying to rape women, and they've been stealing, and they've been under the thumb of their dictator over there. And now they're kind of out on a weekend at Bernie's war with the Russians, but they're getting lit up. He added, we shouldn't be surprised calling Putin a KGB killer in reference to his past with the Soviet Union security agency. Russia, quote, was raised in, or Putin, excuse me, quote, was raised in that world, end quote, pointing to all the so-called Putin opponents and some Putin friends who mysteriously fall off ledges of hospitals 5-10 stories up. I think that there have been 20 in just the last year. Wilkie said, this is who this guy is. He's a gangster, and he will not stop until he's presented with overwhelming force. These are the two very serious stories. Now, Senator Grassley, very long-term serving member of Congress, he's the Republican chair for the Senate Judiciary Committee, urged President Donald Trump to, quote, at least, end quote, sanction Russia. This has been tried, though, didn't work, but he wants more. He says that sanction Russia and President Vladimir Putin following mounting attacks on Ukraine. Russia reportedly attacked Ukraine on Monday for the third night in a row, a day after the largest drone attack of the more than 3-year-old war killed at least 12. We said that. And this is what Chuck Grassley, Republican Iowa, put on his X account, quote, I've had enough of Putin killing innocent people, end quote. He said President Trump take actions in capital letters, at least sanctions. Grassley, 91 years old, he's the oldest member of Congress. He's a member of the Senate Ukraine Caucus and a proponent of the U.S. continuing financial and military assistance to the war-torn country. In April, he expressed a similar sentiment in a post on X. This is what he wrote previously. I've seen enough killing of innocent Ukrainian women and children. President Trump plus people put the toughest sanctions on Putin. You ought to see from clear evidence that he is playing America as a patsy. The Trump administration has been trying to broker peace in the conflict after the Biden administration refused to engage with the Kremlin. But even Trump, who vowed a quick end to the war if elected to a second term, appears to be frustrated with Putin. Yes, he is. This has become a millstone around the president's neck. It's not going well. He said, quote, I've always had a good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him, end quote. He wrote on his Truth Social on Sunday. He has gone absolutely crazy. He is needlessly killing a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it, and maybe that's proving to be right, but if he does, it will lead, now this is the president speaking of the United States of America, it will lead to the downfall of Russia. Folks, this is serious talk. These are the types of things that can lead to world war. I'm not overplaying it. This absolutely has amped up over the last 3 days quite significantly. Could we be looking at all-out European theater of war against Russia to hit the Russian army on the ground, on the Ukrainian battlefield, to stop their advance? It's possible. It's absolutely at least possible. Trump also directed his anger at Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, Quote, likewise, President Zelensky is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. And he has done this. He's like the little, you know, the little bird that keeps, egging it on. Trump wrote, everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. This is a war that would have never started if I were president. This is Zelensky's, Putin's, and Biden's war, not Trump's. I am only helping to put out the big and ugly fires that have been started through gross incompetence and hatred. Trump has maintained existing sanctions on Russia and has threatened to impose stricter ones. Senate Republicans reportedly are warning Russia that they're prepared to pass punishing sanctions if Putin refuses to engage in ceasefire negotiations with Ukraine or breaches an eventual agreement. They have been resistant. The Trump administration has to new sanctions, arguing that new economic penalties risk pushing Russia away from talks. The president's belief is right now, if you start threatening sanctions, the Russians will stop talking. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said May 20th at a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing. And there's value in us being able to talk to them and drive them back or drive them to the table. Well, it's not working. And I don't really honestly believe that further sanctions would do anything either. He's got all he needs on the black market. He's got North Korea, he's got China. There are other nations that will deal with him. He's actually made money. Now he has caught. There's a huge loss here in manpower. There's been a huge loss in his tanks. He has suffered a lot of vehicle losses in this war. They have depleted a lot of their resources, and that's why the Iranians are having to make the drones. Russia is not able to keep up with the demand since they keep firing them in there. Let's move along. Russia's comments back to President Trump. The Kremlin on Monday responded to President Donald Trump's criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin the day before with the assertion that Trump is suffering from, quote, emotional overload, end quote. Trump took to Truth Social on Sunday night to say that Putin has gone, as we said, gone completely crazy in the midst of these 3 days of war. Russia has launched around 900 drones at Ukraine, a record number during the 3-year war. And the quote we had already read. The Russians say, quote, we are really grateful to the Americans and President Trump personally for their assistance in organizing and launching this negotiation process. Oh, what a bunch of hogwash. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. By the way, Dmitry, if this is the same Dmitry, he's the one bragging about getting his education in America at 2 major universities. This is also the one that spouts off things about America. That's another one of our fails in educating people that go back home. He said in response to Trump's post, according to Reuters, quote, this is a very crucial moment, which is associated, of course, with the emotional overload of everyone, absolutely, and with emotional restrictions, or reactions, excuse me. Earlier Sunday, Trump told reporters in Morristown, New Jersey, that he wasn't happy with Putin. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. Trump had been trying to get both sides to agree to a ceasefire in the war, and he spoke with Putin for more than 2 hours last week. Those talks supposedly went well. Well, that's not going well now. So, one more story here, then we'll kind of let's sort of unpack a little bit of this. Retired Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt warned Monday on Newsmax that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is entering a more dangerous phase, saying recent developments show the world that the conflict is now, quote, this is why I said this is tonight, entering the danger zone. I'd even read this article. It said, quote, on an escalation path, end quote. He said Monday, this being Holt, Blaine's former retired Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt. We've seen him many times on TV. He said Monday the Russia-Ukraine conflict is intensifying, citing recent military actions and warning that the situation is moving toward broader confrontation. On, quote, American agenda, end quote, Holt reacted to former President Donald Trump's Sunday statement calling Russian President Vladimir Putin crazy after Russia launched these drone and missile barrage. He said, so at the end of the presser, the more alarming thing happened. This is the retired Brigadier General speaking here. Holt said, referring to the press conference on the matter involving Trump. They asked him, did you know that Ukraine had tried to hit the Putin helicopter on its way? This is what you spoke about my friend the Redneck Rambler. Love that name, by the way. Absolutely love that name. You are Southern Fried top names. We need to start that. But love these names. I always pay attention to names. I love that. Anyway, they asked him, did you know that Ukraine had tried to hit the Putin helicopter on its way to Kursk with 1,100 drones? Now, I haven't heard that. And the president said, I don't know anything about that. Well, that's a foul, Holt added. Somebody on the National Security Council or his chief of staff needs to open up and talk about why the president didn't understand that, because the president is working so hard to broker some sort of peace agreement between the two. Holt also pointed to escalating military support from Western countries as a new and dangerous element in the conflict. Next, foul, opening up weapons, no restrictions, he continued. Putin just said, I already know that you can't deliver those weapons without Western targeting, Western satellites. And I will consider, now this is from the Russian side, I will consider anyone who does that at war with us. Folks, this is serious business. This is a war of words that's being played out on the battlefield, and it only takes one escalation and then a response. And folks, we could be at world war. Amazing. He said, so what does that mean? This is, again, the retired brigadier general. So what does that mean? That means we're on an escalation path, Holt said. While Russia has already started its offensive into Ukraine, so that's not going to get us where the president needs to be. Despite the chaos, Holt credited Trump with offering a clear stance on the conflict. Quote, what I'm worried about is President Trump. His vision has been lockstep, very clear, Holt said, but those that are in his employ and those that are so-called allies in Europe don't seem to be playing ball, and that's very dangerous. Trump had earlier taken the Truth Social to describe Putin's recent behavior, which we talked about here just a few moments ago, called him crazy. So there we go. A war of words, rising escalation of actual warfare, targeting civilians, not the front lines, not the embedded troops. This is targeting civilians, hitting vans, hitting apartment complexes, shopping centers, schools. This is what the Russians are doing. This absolutely is an escalation. The sheer number of attacks in a 3-day span of 900 targeting entirely civilian areas is absolutely putting this path into, it's in the danger zone right now, and something has to de-escalate it. And right now, the person that can de-escalate it is the Russian president, and he doesn't seem like he wants to do that. Meanwhile, just as the retired brigadier general had said, there is words coming out of Germany, France, and Britain, and he's including the Americans, saying there are no range restrictions. So who's supplying those weapons? Well, Russia knows we are. We being the Europeans and the Americans. And he just said, if they hit us with those things, then we consider us to be at war with those who sent them. That's where we are. I remember my mom. I was not born yet. My dad had just came out of the Army. He'd only been out a little bit. He was still eligible for recall. They had been married only a short 2 years at that point, I think. I was not born for, I think 1 year. I was not born for another 2. But the Cuban Missile Crisis, of all the things that my mother lived through, all the wars, she was a little kid born during World War II, but all the things that happened, all the internal strife within our nation, all the things that she had seen, my mom told me that was the scariest she had ever been in her life. And she really believed in her heart we were going to go to war, and that her husband was going to get called back up in to fight it. And she said, just like many Americans, she was sitting on pins and needles, as we say, and so scared that the United States was going to war. This is the kind of thing, this is the thing that can happen. Now, we hope most likely there will be a de-escalation of some kind. But what I'm saying tonight is that anything is on the table. You have a superpower, a nuclear superpower, who is who hates, absolutely hates Ukraine. He hates Zelensky. He has went on record. Remember Tucker Carlson's big visit to Russia? What did he sit and talk about that whole time? The restoration of the motherland. Going back in history, giving him a history lesson, according to Putin, the former KGB member, a history lesson on where this was, where it's been, and where they're at. And he showed no signs of backing off. The Russians are a hard animal to figure sometimes. This is like that song. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. President Trump, he's a pretty good, astute person of discerning his people that he is negotiating with. But I will tell you this: we need to pray for the man right now, because I think that also who's gone crazy is the Europeans, the Russians, and the French. This was not the move. This escalation was not needed. It's a provocation. Again, there are other things we can do, but letting Zelensky, who has been begging for this, to take those restrictions off so he can hit. Oh, he's not just talking about hitting military targets, which I'm sure that's what they would say. What if he hits some civilian areas? The gloves would fully come off. And maybe, just maybe, this is what Putin is hoping for. Maybe he figured, if I could hit them enough, they strike back, then I can say, well, listen, look what they've done. Not even worried about what he has done. I don't know. I really thought, I got to be honest, I didn't think it'd be easy. I didn't think it'd be in one day. I thought we could get there. I thought there would be a negotiated ceasefire. I thought they would be the exchange of prisoners, which has happened, at least some of them. Probably the most wounded and frail and everything else, but they did that. I was glad to see that. There were face-to-face talks. There were others in the region that were brokering those things, helping with those things. The president seemed confident. Things seemed like they were on the right track, and then out of the blue, it escalated. The overnight attacks started getting heavy and heavier and even heavier. And I do, like you, Redneck Rambler, over on the Podbean side, I would like to know more about this attack. We're not got a lot of information. 1,100 drones, is that? I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't have that intel. If anybody knows if they read anywhere that that's how much they fired at that, well, you know what? Let me say it like this: you take your best shot and you miss. Wow. Yes, I have. We have talked about that on the show. We talked about it just tonight briefly. The North Koreans are involved. They've been supplying troops because Russia absolutely needs. They've already cleaned out the prisons and the insane asylums and the militia members and everybody else they could throw at it. It's a bloodbath. It's absolutely a bloodbath. I got to say, I got to give the Ukrainian fighting army a lot of credit. They've not been able to push them back, and they have lost some ground. But they have fought this thing for three. I know that we supplied them with a lot, but they've been able to get very few people. There's been some people that's went and joined the Ukrainian side, but not in the numbers that the Russians have had. So they're fighting a bigger enemy with more, and they've held on. And they've stalemated the Russians in a lot of ways. Now, they've lost a lot of territory, sure. And some cities are absolutely completely destroyed. And the North Koreans seem like they're perfectly content to give him more and more troops for cannon fodder. I mean, he doesn't care. He has no value on human life anyway. And he's got business deals going with the Russian leader anyway. But this is serious business tonight, folks. This has absolutely entered the danger zone. I wrote that title without having read a thing except that those restrictions were taking off. And it seems to me that we are in a bad place right now. Now, what I will say is, Thank God that Biden is not still president. And I don't care if you support him or not. I will say this: he was not going to get this taken care of. He just showed no interest. He talked a lot of big game. President Trump wants to end this. He is engaged. He is actively engaged with all the partners that he can assemble to try to put pressure here. And after all, he's not a warmonger. For all the things he's accused of, he's not went in and hit Iran. A lot of people thought he would do that, just bomb them. They bombed the Houthis, but he hasn't went in and bombed Iran. He's negotiating there. He's trying to negotiate. He's trying to end this mess and get back to making America more profitable. Lowering the debt, working on these tariffs, and getting a better financial deal. But this is going to be, I believe, and I've said it recently, this is going to be, when we look back, I won't say we personally, but when they look back 100 years from now and they look at this presidency, I believe this is going to be either the pro or the con that's going to describe what happened during this 4-year term. He didn't start it. He has said he would have not let it get started. I don't know if he could have done that or not. I tend to think it probably is true, because he would have said the right things to say don't do. It's harder to stop something than it is to start at the beginning. It's very hard to put that back in the can. And I think there's probably a good possibility he's correct there. I'm not going to say it's 100%. Nothing's 100%. But I think he's probably got a point. But you know what, President Trump, I'm sorry. You can't say that now. You're over 100 days in. I get it. I understand that. But it doesn't matter anymore. That part does not matter anymore. We don't blame you for it. What I will say is that the president has to handle this. This is going to be the foreign. He's going to be graded on this, on how he performed in foreign diplomacy. And unfortunately, it's a war that has escalated in a very bad way. Barry comes back in and says all wars is acquired by anybody who comes in contact with it gets sucked in. That's true. And I know he's trying that's a great statement, Barry. I know he's trying very hard not to do that. But we're supplying weapons. We're one of those that's doing that. I got to be honest with you. I'm a little shocked that this German, and there's no love lost, honestly, between us and them. We're not a big fan of this guy anyway. I'm a little bit shocked that he threw our name in there. I'm not shocked that the British, the French, and the Germans did it, although it's still shocking because it shouldn't have happened. I don't think. I think it's a bad move right now to come out and be bragging about that. And it's like a proclamation. It's like drawing the line in the sand. But he threw the Americans in there too. Now, does he have the right intel? I want to hear the president speak on this more. We need to hear a lot more about it. No problem, Redneck, trying to type on a cell phone. A few typos about slip through. Hey, we all have it. I do it when I'm trying to respond in here. You're fine. Thank you for being here. And thank you for liking the show, and we appreciate you being here. What part of the world are you coming to us from, Brother Redneck, if I may say it that way? I'm in Georgia. Barry is in Georgia, who's in here. Some other people that are in here, if they want to say, that's fine. We thank you for supporting the Southern Friday. It is our 1-year anniversary. We were going to celebrate tonight. Robert's sick. We will do that Wednesday. And we are broadcasting to Telegram tonight. The first time ever. We've not done that. This is the second show. And so we're going live there. We're on about 15 different streams tonight. And so if you're watching, thank you for watching wherever you're watching on. A couple of those are doubles between personal accounts and business accounts. But this is the Lone Star Nation. Yeah, baby. Love it. Absolutely. We are, again, supported by Patriot Mobile. We are in partnership with them and the great state of Texas. Use that promo code Cornbread and make the switch today to Patriot Mobile. Support the Southern Fried. Support a great American company who have the American values, and they support the preborn First and Second Amendment. God bless Patriot Mobile. Love them. We love Mammoth Nation, also one of our affiliates. We appreciate them as well. They're doing a half off right now on their lifetime membership. If you got any ideas of joining, I would do that and go ahead and bite the bullet. It's 125. Trust me, it's worth it because you get all those massive discounts when you go through their portal to other American companies, and we appreciate that. Uh, amazing news tonight. It's not the news that I wanted to cover. I've been concerned about it as we headed into seeing these drone attacks. I was absolutely concerned about what was going on with this, but this absolutely amps it up a level, and the rhetoric that is being shared, um, uh, it's on a scale that we've not seen. Um, there's a lot of comments out there across the news cycles tonight about this, and I'm sure tomorrow we'll have even more because this is absolutely huge news that is occurring, that they have now stopped those restrictions. I believe that they were allowed to hit on the border regions at times, military targets, border regions being Russia. They were allowed to hit into the sea and hit the ships. They were allowed to hit areas around Crimea. They were allowed to hit obviously anywhere within their country. There was a couple of times they hit deeper in the country, and I think others got onto them for that very hard. And they have begged, and I have asked the question about this recently. It takes years to develop an Air Force. They're no match for this. But remember, several countries gave up F-15s, F-16s, and others, and the training to train Ukrainian pilots. Where's that at today? That's been a while back. Where's the training at? Could this be also something that comes into the field of battle? I think they would lose very quickly. They're not ready for that. But who knows? Ukraine's getting desperate too, and you just got to wonder what's fixing to happen here. Let's hope that we wake up tomorrow and things have de-escalated. I really hope so. But this is I've been thinking that for 3 days. It just keeps amping up, and the words that are being said tonight from administration officials, others around the world, it's not good. It just is not good. And for the people, our heart goes out to Russians whose sons have been forced into this war. Many of them already dead, as you heard the numbers, or been injured. The Ukrainians obviously had it forced upon them. And listen, we know the bad stories. They're jerking old men and boys off the street. I mean, they're forcing them in vans at gunpoint. I mean, they've got a manpower problem too. They've got gaps through different parts. It's a miracle the Russians haven't exploited that already. Things have been looking really bleak for the Ukrainians, but they've held on. Desperation is in the air on both sides. Nobody wants to come out a loser on this. I think Zelensky is the one that he doesn't have any leverage. Putin has leverage, and he's exploiting it right now. I really thought that the key was to get rid of Zelensky, get him out, send him on exile somewhere. But now I think that doesn't even matter anymore. I really think that doesn't even matter. Although that's still a possibility to get someone else in there that at least will keep his mouth shut and try not to egg on the Russians and let the negotiation take place. But now Putin is making it very easy for Zelensky to get up and all of his buddies join in a chorus of, well, now you see the problem here is him, not me, and we're gonna hit him. We're gonna hit him hard. They're not gonna say that out loud, but that's absolutely what's going to happen. Absolutely what's going to happen. And maybe Zelensky's even afraid to go in exile. Remember the Chechnyan death squads. Don't forget about these guys. You're talking about people you don't want to welcome to your weekend birthday party. These guys look like death warmed over. These guys, they are evil. I mean, you talk. President Bush said when he looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes, he saw KGB. When you look at these guys' eyes, you see death. They have early on, Vladimir Putin sent out the Chechnyan death squads. Their whole sole purpose was to kill Zelensky. They've had to move him around, hide him out. These people, they're still out there. They never called the dogs off. So if he went into exile, I'm sure that they would make a hit on him. But it's absolutely astonishing to me that Putin put himself in that position and came under fire. That's the kind of thing. By the way, what if he had hit that copter? What if he had hit the copter? What if it had went down? What would be happening tonight? I think it's even worse. But now you've got an angry Vladimir. And I'm interested to see what the news will be through tonight and into tomorrow. Now they're ahead of us, and what's happening with that. But now you've got a crazy leader who's been amping up this battle. And if he truly did almost get hit by drones in the helicopter, what hell is fixing to be unleashed on the Ukrainians? And what's going to be said out of Germany and France and Britain? What's going to be said out of Poland, Lithuania, and these other nations? What's going to happen with that? Crazy. And we still don't know what happened to all the children. All those thousands of children that have been taken into Russia. This thing, as wars do, is descending into hell. And I don't know where I don't know where we go from here. But this is a dance that better be danced very carefully. You got to really watch your words right now, Mr. President. You Europeans, you need to shut up. You're absolutely fixing to light the fire, the spark to war. Yes, there's war going on, but it's not with you. This is not a game. This is not your weapons being played out on the battlefield. You get to play it like a video game. We're talking about a nuclear-powered country, a superpower. Even with all the damage that he's taken, don't go there. I think the president is doing a good job. It's difficult, but this has got that bully schoolyard look that I just wonder where it goes from here. You know what? It just takes one rocket off. You know, what if one of those drones hit Poland or other countries? You know, a missile. And what bigger missiles might they drop now? Do we finally see the bombers in the air dropping massive payloads of bombs over Kyiv? I'm telling you, folks, as bad as it's been, it could get a heck of a lot worse and quickly. Barry says, could the European Union desire to drag us back into the war to avoid tariffs? I think they've been wanting to drag us into this war anyway. And this has always been the criticism. We get dragged into this war and we pay the most. We end up losing all this loss of life. We pour this massive amount of money, which is debt, into the thing. And it's like the Europeans go out and say, yeah, knock this off my shoulder. And when they do it, then they call in the Americans and say, see, we got to hit them. Americans, go get them. Now, I'm not saying the British haven't fought hard. They did in World War II, yes. But let's face it. The Americans is what turned the tide in World War II. Absolutely. But this is not a good look. I'm thankful we don't have infantry on the ground, and I hope we never do. But we have entered the danger zone. We will come back to tomorrow night, and we will see where we're at. We'll do an update. We'll look at some other MAGA news. Hope you'll join us. 10 o'clock, same time, Eastern Standard Time, and we will look at this again. I want to see what news comes out of this, because this is going to play out very hard over the next 2 or 3 days, and it's either going to go very bad or it's going to de-escalate. I don't think it can stay where it's at without an escalation. It has to de-escalate. If it stays where it's at, somebody's going to say the wrong thing, or somebody's going to hit the wrong button. Something's going to happen, and the next thing you know, we're going to see C-130s loaded up with massive amounts of equipment headed to Europe. My God. I don't want to see that for our sons and daughters. We got enough problems here. He is a madman. Yes, I have no love for that guy at all. Uh, I really thought that he was after what I thought he was after was the southern part of Ukraine. He could come from Russian territory without having to cross the sea and come down to Crimea and other areas and set up new city, which is bad. It's horrible. I really thought that's what he's after, but I do believe now that he thinks he can win complete victory in Ukraine. And even the president is, I mean, here I am trying to grasp at it, trying to figure out what his game is. The president of the United States is doing the same thing, and other military leaders and people across the world. So it's not an easy thing to figure right now. The Kremlin is very tight-lipped. I mean, my God, he sent his office staff back to using pencil and paper some time ago because he was afraid of people getting a hold of their communications. They're very tight. They're very quiet. The Russians have always been just a little different, right, in the way they do things. So I don't know. God bless every one of you. Thank you for being in here. We're going to stop right there. We don't ever go. It's always intended to be no more than an hour show. We're going to come in just under that, because if I go into another story, I'll go over. So we're going to close it. We'll be back tomorrow night for another MAGA report. I'm Dave in the AM with the Southern Fried Podcast, coming to you across many social streams. We thank you for your support. Let's gather back. Challenge me. Get some intel. See what you find. And come and let's present some of that tomorrow night. And we hope you have a great Tuesday. Get a good night of rest. And let's pray for this situation to get better. God bless everybody. Salute. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.